I stood outside Bella Vista restaurant, smoothing my best navy dress and checking my reflection in the glass doors. Eva had promised me a quiet family dinner for my 70th birthday, just close family and a few friends, she'd said over the phone last week. I was genuinely looking forward to it. After losing my husband Peter 2 years ago, birthdays felt different. Lonelier. The house felt too quiet on special days. But Eva had insisted on celebrating, and I was grateful she cared enough to plan something. I took a deep breath and pushed through the heavy glass doors, expecting to see maybe 10 people sitting around a cozy table. Instead, my heart immediately sank to my stomach. Bright red and blue balloons covered every inch of the ceiling. A massive bouncy castle sat on the outdoor patio, already filled with screaming children. More kids ran everywhere inside the restaurant, their voices echoing off the walls. A huge banner hung across the entire back wall reading, "Leo turns 5, in blazing neon letters that hurt my eyes. Surprise! Everyone yelled as I walked in, but they weren't looking at me. They were all looking at a little boy in a bright green dinosaur costume who came running past me toward the crowd of adults. "Happy birthday, Leo," voices called out enthusiastically. Then, almost as an afterthought, someone noticed me standing there in shock. "Oh, and happy birthday, Samantha, too." Eva rushed over to me, her face absolutely glowing with excitement. She wore a stunning party dress I'd never seen before, probably expensive, and her hair was perfectly styled in elaborate curls. She looked like a professional party hostess, not like someone who'd thrown together a last-minute family dinner for her elderly mother. "Surprise, Mom," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was strong and unfamiliar. "We thought we'd make it one big celebration for both of you. Isn't this absolutely fun?" I stared past her at the neon sign blazing "Leo turns 5" across the entire back wall of the restaurant. The letters were so bright they practically hurt to look at. My name was nowhere to be seen. In 70 years of life, I never felt so completely invisible at my own birthday party. The little boy, Leo, ran up to Eva and grabbed her perfectly manicured hand. "Mommy, Eva, look at all the pretty decorations," he squealed with 5-year-old excitement. She beamed down at him like he was the most precious thing in the world. "Do you like them, sweetie? We worked so hard to make today special for you." I watched the scene unfold, feeling like a complete stranger in my own celebration. 6 months ago, this child didn't even exist in our lives. Now he was calling my daughter, Mommy, while I stood forgotten in the corner like an old piece of furniture. Sean, Eva's new husband of exactly 6 months, appeared beside them with a satisfied grin. He put his arm around Eva's waist possessively and looked at me like he just pulled off some great accomplishment. "Pretty great party, right, Samantha?" he said, gesturing around the chaos. Eva really outdid herself this time. She's got such a talent for this stuff. As more people continued arriving and congratulating Eva on throwing such a wonderful celebration, my mind drifted back to our heated argument 6 months ago. I could still hear our voices echoing in my quiet kitchen, the tension thick enough to cut. "Mom, you just don't understand," Eva had said, pacing around my dining room like a caged animal. "Sean makes me truly happy. Leo needs a stable mother figure in his life." "Sweetheart, you've only known him for 4 months," I'd replied as carefully as possible, trying not to sound judgmental. "Maybe you could wait just a little longer? Get to know each other better before making such a big commitment." Her face had flushed bright red with anger. "You're just jealous that I'm building a new family. You can't stand that I'm finally moving on with my life instead of staying stuck in the past like you." "That's not true at all, Eva. I want nothing more than for you to be happy. I just think you think I'm making a terrible mistake. You always think that about my choices. You're so old-fashioned, Mom. This is how people date and get married now. Sean is a good man, and Leo is a sweet kid who deserves love." Looking around at this expensive circus now, with professional entertainers and elaborate decorations that must have cost thousands, I realized my warnings about rushing into marriage had been completely right. Sean clinked his champagne glass loudly with a spoon, and the entire room fell quiet. He stood confidently in the center of the crowd, holding Leo's small hand, with Eva beaming proudly beside him like they were some perfect family. "I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight to celebrate my son Leo's 5th birthday," he began in a booming voice. The crowd clapped enthusiastically. "And of course, we're also celebrating Samantha, who has been such a wonderful grandmother figure to Leo these past few months." My face burned with embarrassment and confusion. Grandmother figure? I'd met this child exactly 3 times in my entire life, and each meeting had been brief and awkward. But everyone was smiling and nodding like this made perfect sense. "Samantha has really stepped up to help our new blended family," Sean continued, his voice carrying across the room. "She's been so incredibly generous and supportive during our transition. It means the absolute world to us that she's here tonight to share this special milestone with Leo." More thunderous applause filled the room. I forced a tight smile and raised my champagne glass slightly, but inside I was screaming with confusion and anger. Generous? Supportive? What on earth was he talking about? I'd been polite to the child because he was innocent in all this mess, but I'd never agreed to be his grandmother or support their family financially. During the elaborate dinner service, Eva leaned over and whispered directly in my ear. Her breath smelled strongly of champagne, and she giggled softly, like she was sharing some delightful secret. "This way we save so much money, Mom. You should really be grateful we decided to include you in Leo's celebration. Planning 2 separate parties would have been incredibly expensive and wasteful." I nearly choked on my wine, coughing slightly. Save money? Grateful? I looked around at the absolutely elaborate decorations, the hired entertainer making balloon animals for a long line of children, the professional photographer snapping pictures of Leo from every angle. This didn't look like anyone was trying to save money at all. "I thought you told me this was going to be a small family dinner for my birthday," I whispered back, trying to keep my voice steady. She waved her hand dismissively, like I was being ridiculous. "It is your birthday dinner. We're celebrating both of you at the same time. It's just more efficient this way, don't you think?" Efficient. My 70th birthday milestone was being called efficient. I sipped my champagne slowly and tried desperately to push down the growing hurt in my chest. Around me, children shrieked with laughter as the entertainer pulled colorful scarves from his magic hat. Parents chatted enthusiastically about school pickup schedules, soccer practice, and summer vacation plans. No one was talking about my life, my 7 decades of memories, or anything that mattered to me personally. When it finally came time for the cake ceremony, all the lights dimmed dramatically and everyone gathered around a long decorated table. The servers wheeled out an absolutely enormous 5-tier dinosaur cake covered in bright green frosting with realistic plastic dinosaurs crawling all over every level. 5 flickering candles sat on the very top tier. "Happy birthday to you," everyone sang loudly, all eyes focused completely on Leo. The little boy's eyes were huge with pure 5-year-old excitement. He clapped his small hands and bounced up and down on his toes. Sean lifted him up high so he could see the magnificent cake better, and Eva took dozens of pictures with her expensive phone, the camera flash going off constantly. Then, almost as a complete afterthought, a single server appeared from the kitchen carrying a small store-bought cake from the grocery store. It had "Happy 70th" written in simple blue frosting that looked like it had been done by a teenager. Too sad. Thin candles stuck out of the top at crooked angles. "Oh, right, and happy birthday to Samantha too," someone called out weakly from the back of the crowd. A few people sang another quick, half-hearted verse, but most guests were already digging into pieces of the spectacular dinosaur cake. Children grabbed their slices and ran off to continue playing. Adults chatted about how absolutely adorable Leo had looked blowing out his candles. I stood there holding my tiny, pathetic cake, feeling completely foolish and forgotten. For the next hour and a half, I sat quietly and watched Eva and Sean pose for what seemed like hundreds of photos, acting like they were the gracious hosts of some grand charity gala. Guests kept congratulating them enthusiastically on throwing such a fantastic, elaborate party, and asking where they'd found such a creative venue that could handle such a large celebration. "Eva planned absolutely everything," Sean said proudly, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. "She's completely amazing at this kind of stuff." She has such natural talent for entertaining. You two really went all out with this celebration, one impressed guest said, looking around at the decorations. This whole thing must have cost an absolute fortune. Eva just smiled mysteriously and shrugged. We really wanted to make tonight special and memorable for everyone. I sat alone at my assigned table, tucked away in the far corner, as far from the main action as possible, and watched my daughter bask in praise and admiration. A few of my older cousins came over periodically to check on me, quietly shaking their heads in obvious disapproval. This is really something else, Samantha, Cousin Ruth murmured, looking around at the chaos with raised eyebrows. How are you holding up through all this, dear? I'm perfectly fine, I lied through gritted teeth. But I wasn't fine at all. I was watching my only daughter take full credit for organizing an elaborate party I apparently hadn't been consulted about, celebrating a child I barely knew, while my own milestone 70th birthday became nothing more than a forgotten footnote. As the party finally began winding down and guests started collecting their coats and saying goodbye, I gathered my purse and light spring jacket. The entertainer was packing up his magic tricks and balloon-making supplies. Parents were carrying sleepy, sugar-crashed children out to their cars. The noise level finally dropped to something bearable for the first time all evening. That's when the banquet manager approached me directly. He was a thin, professional man in an expensive black suit, carrying an important-looking leather folder. He smiled with practiced politeness and extended his hand for a formal handshake. Mrs. Samantha Brooks, he asked in a business-like tone. Yes, that's me. Thank you so very much for booking this elaborate event with us tonight. I sincerely hope everything met your complete satisfaction and expectations. If you're ready now, I have the final bill prepared here for you to review and settle the account. He handed me the thick leather folder with a flourish, like he was presenting me with some kind of prestigious award for hosting such a successful party. My hands immediately started shaking as I opened the folder. The number printed at the bottom made my vision blur and my heart skip beats. $24,187. I stared at the page for several long seconds, reading the total twice to make absolutely sure I wasn't hallucinating or misreading the numbers. $24,187. I think there's been some kind of serious mistake, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. I looked up and saw Eva watching me intently from across the room. When our eyes met, she immediately walked over with that same bright, fake smile she'd worn all evening long. Everything okay over here, Mom? She asked sweetly, her voice dripping with false concern. I held up the bill with trembling hands. There seems to be some major confusion here. My name is listed as the person responsible for payment, but I never agreed to pay for any of this. Her practiced smile faltered for just a split second, then came back even brighter and more forced than before. Oh, well, you don't mind covering it, do you? It's completely traditional for parents to help with these kinds of family celebrations. Traditional? My voice came out much higher than I'd intended. What tradition are you talking about exactly? You know, when families celebrate milestones together, parents and grandparents usually handle the costs, especially grandparents who want to show love for their new grandchildren. She glanced meaningfully at Leo, who was playing nearby with leftover balloons. It's completely normal, Mom. Everyone expects this. Sean suddenly appeared beside her, putting his heavy hand on my shoulder in what felt like a possessive gesture. Thanks so much, Samantha, he said loudly enough for all the remaining guests to hear clearly. We absolutely knew you'd come through for our family. You're the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for. Several nearby people turned to look at our little group. I felt completely trapped, cornered into agreeing to something I'd never agreed to, with witnesses watching my every reaction. Other guests were still lingering around the restaurant, collecting their belongings and saying their final goodbyes. They could all clearly hear Sean's loud, public thanks and see me standing there holding the enormous bill. It felt like a carefully orchestrated performance designed to make me look like I'd willingly planned and agreed to pay for this entire elaborate celebration. We really, truly appreciate this generous gift, Eva added, speaking loud enough for others to hear. Mom always comes through for family when it really matters. A few guests smiled and nodded approvingly in my direction. One elderly man patted my arm gently and said, "How incredibly generous of you, Samantha. What a lovely, thoughtful gesture for your new grandson." I felt like I was drowning in quicksand. Everyone around me thought I'd eagerly agreed to this arrangement. They thought I'd willingly combined my 70th birthday celebration with a 5-year-old's elaborate party and cheerfully offered to pay for the entire expensive event. But I hadn't agreed to any of it. Not one single detail. My hands trembled violently as I flipped through the detailed bill page by page. Petting zoo rental, $800. Custom neon sign creation, $600. Professional photography package, $1,200. DJ and premium sound system, $900. Children's entertainer and magic show, $500. Premium balloon decoration package, $400. The list went on and on endlessly. None of this expensive entertainment had anything whatsoever to do with me or my birthday celebration. But my name was printed clearly at the top of every page as the financially responsible party. I studied the incredibly detailed itemized list more carefully, my heart sinking deeper with each ridiculous line item. Bouncy castle rental, professional face painting station, personalized party favors for 30 children, dinosaur-themed table settings, specialty lighting design, premium bar package with top-shelf liquor. The extravagant expenses went on for 3 full pages. At the very bottom of the final page, I finally found the few items that were actually related to my birthday celebration. A small floral arrangement, $75, 1 bottle of champagne for the toast, $85, and my tiny store-bought grocery cake, $35. 95% of this outrageous bill was exclusively for Leo's elaborate birthday party. But somehow, my daughter had put my name down as the person who would pay for absolutely all of it, including thousands of dollars in children's entertainment. Without asking me first. Without even warning me what she was planning. Without giving me any choice in the matter whatsoever. I looked up at Eva, who was now cheerfully helping Leo collect his mountain of birthday presents from other children's parents. She'd planned this entire trap carefully. She'd booked this expensive venue, ordered all these elaborate decorations, hired these professional entertainers, and confidently told the restaurant management that I would handle the massive bill. She'd set a perfect trap, and I'd walked right into it like a naive fool. "Mom," she called over casually, "are you ready to take care of that bill now? I think everyone's getting tired and wants to head home." The casual, dismissive way she said it made my blood pressure spike dangerously. I closed the leather folder quietly and looked around the restaurant one final time. A few guests were still chatting pleasantly near the front door. The photographer was carefully packing up his expensive equipment. Leo was running around happily with a helium balloon, completely innocent and unaware of the adult drama surrounding him. I pulled out my pen with steady hands and circled exactly 3 items on the bill. The small flowers, $75, the champagne bottle, $85, and my pathetic little birthday cake, $35. The total came to exactly $195. I walked directly to the manager and handed him my credit card with complete composure. "I'll pay for these specific items," I said calmly, pointing to what I'd circled. "The rest of this bill will need to be handled by the actual hosts and planners of this party." His eyebrows rose in obvious surprise. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand the situation. These 3 items were purchased for my birthday celebration. Everything else on this bill was for the child's party, which I did not plan, authorize, or agree to pay for. I'm only responsible for events I actually participated in organizing." I signed the receipt for exactly $195 and handed the folder back to him with the remaining balance of $23,992 still completely unpaid. Then I picked up my small, untouched leftover birthday cake and walked toward the front door with my head held high and my shoulders straight. Behind me, I could hear Eva's voice rising in panic, calling my name repeatedly, but I didn't turn around or slow down. I could hear Eva calling my name behind me, but I didn't turn around. The valet brought my car, and I carefully placed my untouched birthday cake in the passenger seat. Other guests were still standing around the valet area, and I could feel them watching me. Some looked confused. Others whispered to each other. But I kept my shoulders straight and my expression calm. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. I knew what I'd done was right. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I thought about the look on the manager's face when I'd circled those 3 items. He'd understood immediately. The bill was outrageous, and most of it had nothing to do with an elderly woman's birthday dinner. I'd been set up, but I hadn't fallen for it. My phone started ringing before I even got home. Eva's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. By the time I pulled into my driveway, she'd called 4 more times. I turned off my phone and went inside to have a piece of my own birthday cake in peace. The next morning, my phone had 12 missed calls from Eva and 6 from Sean. I made myself coffee and toast before listening to the voicemails. Mom, what the hell did you do? Eva's voice was shrill and angry. The manager said you left without paying. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. The next message was worse. You ruined Leo's birthday. How could you be so selfish? Call me back right now. Sean's messages were just as bad. Samantha, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to fix this immediately. We're talking about a 5-year-old child here. When my phone rang again, I finally answered. Mom, you have to come back and pay that bill, Eva said without even saying hello. I paid for my portion, I replied calmly. The flowers, champagne, and cake that were actually for my birthday. The rest is your responsibility. That's not how this works. Your name is on the contract. A contract I never signed. A party I never planned. A celebration I wasn't even told about until I walked through the door. By noon, Eva had posted something on social media. My sister called to tell me about it. Samantha, you need to see this, she said. Eva wrote a long post about how her selfish mother ruined her stepson's birthday party and abandoned the family in their time of need. My heart sank. What did she say exactly? She made it sound like you promised to pay for everything and then changed your mind at the last minute. She said you humiliated a 5-year-old child and showed your true colors. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. Eva was spinning this to make me look like the villain. People who didn't know the real story would think I'd promised to pay for a child's birthday party and then backed out cruelly. The comments are pretty harsh, my sister continued gently. A lot of people are calling you selfish.
But then she paused.
Although some people are asking questions. Like why a 70-year-old woman would be expected to pay for someone else's child's party in the first place. That afternoon, the family group chat exploded. Eva had shared her version of events, painting me as a cruel grandmother who'd abandoned her grandson on his special day. Mom literally promised to help with the party and then left us hanging, she wrote. Leo was so confused about why Grandma Samantha left angry. I had to lie and tell him she wasn't feeling well. Several relatives jumped in to support her. That's terrible, Eva. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. But then I'd had enough. I typed one message and attached a photo of the bill, with my 3 circled items clearly visible. This is what I actually paid for. Everything else was planned without my knowledge or consent. The chat fell silent for several minutes. Then my cousin Ruth wrote, Wait, they expected you to pay $24,000 for a party you didn't know about? Another cousin added, That bill is insane. Who spends that much on a 5-year-old's birthday? Slowly, the tide began to turn. That evening, Sean called me. He was furious. Real grandparents step up for their grandchildren. He shouted into the phone, Leo thinks of you as his grandmother, and you abandoned him. I took a deep breath before responding. I'm not his grandmother, Sean. He is a father. Maybe you should act like one and pay for your own son's party. We're a family now. Eva is my wife, which makes you Leo's grandmother. Being married to my daughter for 6 months doesn't make me responsible for your financial obligations. You plan this party. You pay for it. You're destroying our family. I'm protecting myself from being used. There's a difference. He hung up, and I heard him swearing as the line went dead. 20 minutes later, Eva called, crying. Mom, the venue is threatening to call collections. You have to help us. You should have thought about that before you put my name on a bill, without asking me. The next morning, the banquet manager called me. His tone was polite but firm. Mrs. Brooks, I wanted to follow up about the outstanding balance on your event. We have $23,992 remaining, and our payment terms require settlement within 48 hours. I understand, I said calmly, but I need to clarify something. I only authorized payment for the items I circled, the flowers, champagne, and small cake. Everything else was planned and ordered by my daughter and her husband. They are the responsible parties for the remaining balance. There was a pause. But your name is listed as the primary contact on the contract. A contract I never signed. I was told this was a small family dinner for my birthday. I had no knowledge of the children's party until I arrived. Another pause. I see. Well, in that case, we'll need to pursue payment from the actual party planners. That would be Eva and Sean Mitchell. Thank you for understanding. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. My sister called that afternoon with interesting news. She'd been at the grocery store and overheard two women talking about the party. They were saying they couldn't believe what they witnessed, she told me. One of them said she's never seen anything so manipulative. They felt terrible for you. Really? She said everyone could tell you had no idea what was happening. The way Eva and Sean acted like you'd planned the whole thing was obvious to anyone paying attention. It was a relief to know that at least some people had seen through the charade. The other woman said she would have done exactly what you did. She called it brilliant, the way you only paid for your own items. I just couldn't let them bully me into paying for something I never agreed to. You shouldn't have to. What they did was wrong, Samantha. Your dignity spoke for itself that night. 3 days later, Eva showed up at my house. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept. Mom, please, she said as soon as I opened the door. The venue is threatening to send the bill to collections. Our credit cards are maxed out. We need your help. I invited her in and made her a cup of tea, but I didn't change my position. I'm sorry you're in this situation, Eva. But it's a situation you created by planning an expensive party without the means to pay for it. But you thought you could trick me into paying for it. You put my name on that contract without asking me. You turned my 70th birthday into someone else's party and expected me to be grateful for the privilege of paying $24,000. She started crying again. Just this once, Mom.
Please.
We'll pay you back. I handed her a box of tissues. Just this once was last night, Eva. I will not be manipulated into paying for your husband's irresponsibility. The following Sunday, Eva tried a different approach. She brought Leo to the family dinner at my sister's house, clearly hoping to use the child to guilt me into changing my mind. Look, Leo, she said loudly as they walked in. There's Grandma Samantha. Remember your birthday party? The little boy ran up to me with a shy smile.
Grandma Samantha.
Thank you for my dinosaur party. My heart ached for him. None of this was his fault. But then Eva started her performance. Leo has been asking why Grandma left his party early. I didn't know what to tell him. Several relatives were listening, and I could see her trying to manipulate the situation again. My nephew spoke up. Actually, Eva, we all heard about what really happened. Mom showed us the bill you tried to stick Samantha with. That was pretty low. Eva's face flushed red. One by one, other family members chimed in. They'd all seen the photo of the bill, and they weren't buying her victim act. By the end of dinner, Eva was the one who looked embarrassed. 2 weeks later, I heard through the family grapevine that the venue had sent Sean a formal demand letter. They were threatening legal action if the bill wasn't paid within 10 days. My nephew told me Sean had tried to laugh it off at first, claiming they were just flexing and wouldn't actually sue. But when a process server showed up at their apartment, the reality hit them hard. I heard he had to sell his truck, my sister whispered to me over coffee. And they're borrowing money from his parents. Part of me felt bad for them, but a bigger part of me felt vindicated. They tried to use me, and there had to be consequences for that. Do you think they'll actually take it to court? I asked. No way. Sean's parents apparently read them the riot act when they asked for money. They couldn't believe their son had tried to stick you with the bill. Even his own family thought what they'd done was wrong. For the next few weeks, Eva gave me the silent treatment. She wouldn't answer my calls or respond to my texts. She skipped family gatherings where I'd be present. I heard through relatives that she was embarrassed about how everything had unfolded. The story had spread through our extended family, and everyone knew what they'd tried to do. "She's humiliated," my cousin told me. "Sean's family has been giving them grief about it, and their friends are asking uncomfortable questions about why they couldn't afford their own kid's party." Meanwhile, whispers followed them wherever they went. People who'd been at the party were talking. The story was spreading beyond our family. They'd wanted to embarrass me, but instead, they'd exposed themselves as manipulative and financially irresponsible. The silent treatment didn't bother me as much as Eva probably hoped it would. I was actually enjoying the peace. Eventually, the venue did file a lawsuit. To avoid the public humiliation of going to court, Sean and Eva scrambled to come up with the money. His parents lent them part of it, but they had to sell his truck and take out a high-interest loan for the rest. The financial stress began taking a toll on their marriage. My sister heard from a neighbor that they'd been having loud arguments about money and responsibility. Sean apparently blamed Eva for not handling her mother better, she told me, and Eva blamed him for not being able to afford his own son's party. The cracks in their relationship were showing. When you build a marriage on unstable ground and add financial pressure, things fall apart quickly. "Do you feel bad for them?" my sister asked. I thought about it. I feel bad that they're struggling, but I don't feel bad for protecting myself from being used. They made their choice when they put my name on that bill without asking. Their marriage might not survive this, but that wasn't my responsibility either. A year later, I planned my 71st birthday exactly the way I wanted it. I invited only my closest family members to my favorite restaurant. We had a lovely dinner, shared stories, and laughed together. My cake had my name on it, and everyone sang to me.
No bouncy castles.
No children running around screaming. No neon signs with someone else's name. Just peace, love, and genuine celebration. Eva wasn't there. She and Sean had separated 6 months earlier, and she was living with a friend while they worked out custody arrangements for Leo. The financial strain had been too much for their young marriage. During my toast, I raised my glass and said, "The best gift I received this year was learning the difference between family that loves you and family that uses you. Here's to the people who truly care." The room was filled with people who'd supported me through the whole ordeal. People who understood that love doesn't come with a $24,000 bill attached. As I blew out my candles, I felt whole again. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim.